Hello, and welcome to Leaderfolk, an inclusive look inside the Jewish community. I'm your host, Sara. I'm so thrilled to welcome our guest today, Amanda Katz. Amanda is the Executive Director of the Jewish Coalition Against Domestic Abuse, and I'm so grateful to have you with us today, Amanda. Hi.
Hi, Sara. Thank you.
Thanks for being here. So I love to begin just by asking, what is your journey? What is your Jewish journey? How did you get to where you are today?
It's a great question. So I was raised in West Hartford, Connecticut, and in a very Jewish environment, Jewishly rich environment. My parents are divorced, and one set was more on the conservative side, and the other set also conservative, but more on the reform side. And regardless of the tradition, we were always just taught to greet our Jewish faith with joy. And I think that's just been the bottom line since the beginning, that we love the traditions and the food and the family time. And that's sort of the genesis of my Jewish life. And I really found the Jewish community at the George Washington University Hillel, where I was pretty active and found my community. And from there, my first internship and job in Washington, D.C. At a Jewish organization. And so for the past 22 years, that's what I've been doing. That's how I launched into this career of being a Jewish communal professional.
And tell us a little bit more about your role at the Jewish Coalition Against Domestic Abuse.
So Jacada is a 20-year-old organization that's gone through tremendous growth and change. And when I came on board about a year and a half ago, I was really tasked with raising the agency's profile in our community and raising funds to keep the incredible work that the staff are doing, to keep that going. And so that's been my charge for the last year and a half that I've been with Jacada.
Wow. Okay. So a year and a half in this role. Had you been executive director before? Were you new to that job title in general?
I am a new executive director, and I love meeting other new executive directors because we all have a lot of energy and passion for being an executive director. I had gotten a master's degree in nonprofit management and Jewish communal service online over the past few years. And when I completed that degree, my motivation was really to be making the decisions and not just implementing the decisions that people had made for me. So for so many years, I'd had sort of assistant director titles or associate director titles. And my goal was really to be the executive director and have the kind of vision and mission setting role for an agency.
I'd love to dive in a little bit to the specific work of Jacada. Mm-hmm. And can you tell us, what is power-based violence? And can you explain the evolution of language around that term for listeners who are maybe more familiar with terms like domestic abuse?
Absolutely. So power-based violence is an umbrella term for any time someone uses power and control over another person. So the clients we see are mostly in a domestic violence situation, workplace harassment, a sexual assault, elder abuse, stalking, or some sort of intimate partner dating violence relationship. And people use so many different elements to hold control over another person. So it can be children, It can be finances. Um, it could be some sort of a spiritual ritual. People use immigration status, all sorts of different ways. We have found that people will take some sort of element of power and control and use it over another person. So it's not always physical, and it's sometimes it's financial, spiritual, technological, all different kinds of abuse. And the evolution of the language, I used to hear people say things like battered women. So it was always women, and it was always about their victimhood. And what Jacada is all about is empowering people who've been victimized to feel safe and to make choices for their life moving forward about whatever situation they're in. So that's sort of the language went from the victim blaming side of things to really recognizing that abuse and violence are intentional. They are aimed at a certain person that the perpetrator knows that they can control or thinks that they can control and really perpetrate violence against that person. So we use the word violence because it really is a very visceral term, and it really speaks to the heart of what the intentionality and cruelty of the person who's perpetrating that violence. And that can happen in the workplace, it can happen at school, it happens in people's homes, it happens in all kinds of different relationships. So that's what we're always looking at. And at Jacada, the organization started in the year 2000, so we're in our 20th anniversary year. And when it began, the intention was, it was formed by Jewish women to help other Jewish women who were suffering from a domestic violence situation in their home. And the organization was really holding that trauma in their hands and really helping women work through that trauma with counseling. And over the years, we developed not only a robust counseling practice, so trauma-informed counseling, but we also have a legal department. They'll help people get a protective order or understand their rights as a victim. We also have a victim advocacy department. And they look at housing, childcare, access to public benefits, things like food stamps, things like the address confidentiality program. So if you've been in a relationship and you're afraid that you're being stalked by someone, you have the right to not have your address public, even on your driver's license. So we're really looking holistically at each person and their needs. And then we also have developed a robust prevention, education, and training team. And they are going into schools starting in middle school, all through high school and college, talking to teens and young adults about healthy relationships. And we also go into places of worship and other businesses and institutions to talk about creating safe space for victims to come forward, and also either about workplace harassment or things that are happening in their home. And as all of this sort of grew over the last 20 years, we took government grants starting in the early 2000s, which meant that we really needed to serve anyone and everyone. So we see people regardless of their sexual expression, sexual orientation, faith, race, immigration status, and all of our services are free. So we do not ask about finances. So we really, stay with each person whoever they are and whatever they need until they feel empowered and safe.
It's such beautiful, powerful work that you do. And I am so impressed with the way that it's grown to encompass, as you said, anyone and everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And I would love for you to talk about what does it mean to be a Jewish organization that then has that breadth of interface with the community? Like, how does Judaism inform the work that you do, even though you are serving people of all, races, faiths, expressions, and identities?
So I think the J question is something that comes up for us and for other nonprofits who are in the same position. We have a diverse client base, we have diverse staff, and we have now a diverse board. And we intentionally have been recruiting board members who will better reflect our clients so that we really have a robust understanding of the needs of our clients at all times. And that's what's foremost in our minds and in our hearts and in our work. So where the tension comes in is when anytime someone is concerned that they can't get services because they aren't Jewish, someone feels that maybe they can't apply to our organization to work because they're not Jewish, or someone holds back funding because of a concern that we're a faith based organization. And we really do our utmost to make sure that we're always expressing our openness and our non discrimination policy, as broadly shared as possible. So that it's really understood. And if you meet with us and talk with us and take the time, you really will understand that it's just not a requirement. But it does inform who we are, and it's infused in how we do our work. And we have, I guess, I would say, created a set of core values that inform who we are and what we are and how we work. And those core values have become sort of like our basis of our priorities, I guess. The first is cultural humility. So we are always learning. Our staff are always learning about different cultures, and we're always trying to inform our work so we can meet our clients where they are and get them what they need, regardless of their faith or background. So just this year, we've had trainings by Catholic Charities. We've had trainings by Whitman Walker to talk about the LGBTQ plus community. We had someone come in to talk about traumatic brain injury so we can understand our clients who are coming from a dementia or from having had a traumatic brain injury. A lot of those injuries occur after a strangulation or a physically violent encounter. So we really need to understand what happens to somebody when they've been through that. We've had trainings from the traditional Muslim community and the Orthodox Jewish community just in the past few months. So that's a huge value for us. Empowerment is our second value, really helping our clients feel safe and feel like they're making the decisions. We give them the choices and the resources and all the information we can, and we walk with them. We say b'kavod together through whatever they've decided is best for them and their family. We strive for excellence, so that's sort of our professional development and our ongoing education and improvement of ourselves as staff members. As a board of directors, they do that also, always training, always learning. Our holistic approach is another one of our values, and that's, as I said about victim advocacy, it's really about managing the whole case as the whole person and not just an incident or something that happened to them, but really how are they doing? What are all their needs? Where are they living? How are they getting their food? How's work going? All those ways that we can help somebody in their whole life. We strive for integrity, best practices, and really open and honest community relationships. And a huge part of what we do is as a piece of the continuum of care in our community, as a domestic violence organization, as a sexual assault organization, as a Jewish organization. We're tied in with all the other agencies who are doing similar work or complementary work. So we're always learning from our partners in the community, and we're always really striving to have warm relationships so that we can get our clients the best of what's out there for them. And then our last core value is tikkun olam, and really challenging the systemic injustices that are in our world. This has been coming up so much lately. There's so much intersectionality between race and gender and the violence that is happening in our world. And we have a lot of work to do. I always think back to the quote. It's from the Talmud, and I'm embarrassed I don't have the exact words in front of me, but I know I'm not going to finish the work, but I'm obligated to start it. And so every day I make sure that I've started some piece of work that is going to help someone.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that we're all kind of grappling with how can we start the work within our own, our own little corner of impact.
Exactly. So we, as a staff, it's been very interesting. We've gotten together to have conversations over the past few months since the Black Lives Matter movement really got started, the past 2 months, I'd say. And we've been talking a lot about how we're educating ourselves, but also how we are acting as a staff to make sure that we're fully educated and we're good employers, and that our employees feel comfortable wherever they are in their faith, race, that we have a really open and communicative environment. So we've been starting meetings by discussing different articles. We've been talking a lot about how this, the racial issues show up in our lives. We've been focused on expanding our board and our staff to include people of color. We have had staff who are of color. Right now, we're missing the mark on that one. And it's something where, I think with a little effort and some thought behind it, we can make a more diverse workforce. And it's really just comes back to being intentional, I think. Same thing with our board. We're recruiting right now, this Jewish organization that started 20 years ago of lovely older Jewish women wanting to take care of this issue for the community. The lack of diversity is, we can't keep going in this way. It also, just for the best for our clients and the best to get funding. Right now, a lot of government agencies are looking at how diverse your board is, and foundations too, I've noticed, are asking about the board and staff, and having people of color represented. I would love to also have people who don't identify as female. We've got some younger board members now, so I'm excited about that. I think a diversity in age also really helps to, bring just a more robust conversation to light. So I think we have work to do, but I think we're heading in a great direction. One thing that I'm so proud of the staff for doing is when there is a systemic issue, we go to the system. So we had a client who had been really violently attacked. She had been strangled and beaten by a partner, and we helped her get to the hospital. And in that time, we discovered that the hospital had broken their own rules about HIPAA and given out this client's personal information. So her abuser would have been able to find her in that hospital. And we went to the hospital administration. We went to our partners who are forensic nurses, and really with the intention of saying, like, there's a system here. It's set up to protect people. And in this case, it failed. And we want to understand, we need you to know that it failed. And we want to really understand what happened here so that we can prevent it from happening again. And in the end, it's really about saving lives. So when we look at policing and, there's different issues with racism that we look at about how much more the numbers increase for people of color in abusive relationships. But we're also looking at, the system of policing, and really would love to see more funds put toward training our police, training the people who answer 911, and thinking through what victims really need. We have a lot of victims who won't call the police. They say, I don't want another Black man in jail, or my community will shun me, or I don't have the money. If he goes to jail and loses his job, I can't support myself and the kids. There's so many reasons. I'm an immigrant, I'm legal, but in this environment, I'm terrified, and I'm not going to call law enforcement. I don't want to get the government involved. So wouldn't it be incredible if 911 didn't just trigger a police action, but triggered some sort of help for victims in all kinds of ways? Could they reach an advocate who could help them, find a shelter or something like that, so they don't have to include the authorities? So there's a lot of conversations going on, and there are some incredible pieces being written about really what the priority is for the domestic violence and sexual assault communities who help in these areas, like what our priorities are for this moment. Because if we have the moment and it's really happening and it feels like it is, then we're going to see changes in legislation, and we're going to see changes in policy and procedure that we want to get in on the ground floor of having an effect on.
It's incredibly inspiring to hear about you and, the fact that there are Jewish organizations on the forefront of this incredibly necessary change. And I just want to kind of give a shout out also to the helpline that Jaqueda operates, because I don't know everything about it, but I do think that it sounds like a really amazing alternative point of contact for some of these resources.
Yeah, I'd love to tell you more about it because it's
Yeah,
a
please.
phenomenal resource. So our helpline is open during business hours, and we actually just expanded it a bit to go a little later into the evening. And when you call, you get someone on staff. Everyone on staff is trained to answer the helpline, but we have 2 crisis counselors who answer for the bulk of the hours. And it's really it's a chance for anyone, either a victim themselves or a friend or a family member, or just someone who's seen something and just wants to talk it through. You can remain anonymous, or you can give us as much information as you'd like. And the idea is safety planning first and foremost. So, is the person who's calling in a safe space? We've had to do safety planning that involves literally, is your cell phone charged? Are there weapons in the house? Can you get to an exit? Do you have a safe place to bring your children, etc.? Like, if something is to happen next, what's the plan in your head that you can execute and get yourself out of a physically dangerous situation? that safety plan could also be an emotional safety plan. When you get into this kind of situation, what mantras are you going to hold fast to, or who can you reach out to talk to if your partner gets a certain way that's uncomfortable for you? And we've also had people call and just kind of question things. Lately, because of COVID, and we can get into sort of how the shutdown has affected domestic violence and elder abuse in general. But the calls to our helpline have become more numerous and more violent. So we do a lethality assessment. Are there weapons in the house? Is someone unemployed? If a woman is pregnant, lethality goes up. If someone's been strangled or physically hurt. So all of these things are called a lethality assessment. We do that as well to check in and see, sometimes it's a good reality check to help somebody see that their situation may be more dangerous than they were really sure of. And then it's a chance to give someone resources, and they can have access to our attorneys, to our victim advocates, to our counselors. We do a crisis session within a day or two. And then we do have a wait list. Our clinical team are just phenomenal. They all have really full caseloads, and we still have 100 people on a wait list who are waiting for ongoing trauma-informed counseling. But while people wait, we check in with them. They can have sessions with our victim advocates. They can come to group therapy or resiliency groups. We've done art therapy, acupuncture, yoga, meditation, all different kinds of techniques to help people ground and to help them have other outlets. And then they can also have access to our attorneys to talk through their case, talk through what's happening. We can refer them to low bono or pro bono attorneys in some cases, and in some cases help someone get a protective order. So all of that really comes from that first call to the helpline. People find us from going to a crisis center in a local county. They can find us through our, we have bathroom signs. They're in the stalls at every synagogue and Jewish institution in the area. Right now, nobody's looking at those, but they are there, and they've been a large source of referrals. Lately, we've gotten a lot of calls because we were, through a grant, able to create a PSA that's been running on television. And gosh darn it, they're playing it during Jeopardy. And wouldn't you know, a lot of people watch Jeopardy. So we're getting a lot of calls to our helpline. And then a lot of people who've done our prevention, education, or training programs end up calling afterwards. One thing that this pandemic has unfortunately done is sidelined our access to the teens and young adults that we normally have in programs throughout the school year. And camp and all those kinds of touch points for us were all canceled over the spring. So normally after a session, say in a public school, a private school, an after school care, or a religious school program, we get calls from parents, teachers, administrators, students. I saw your program, I have a question, and we end up getting a lot of clients that way as well, which is kind of speaks to our holistic core value, back to the core values, because they know us. And we've built a trust by going into their school or religious school or after school program, and they get to know us. And then when they call, we're familiar.
There's so much here. I feel like I could ask you questions for days and days. So you did mention the pandemic limiting your access to those young people and causing a spike in calls related to other sorts of domestic abuse and violence. Are there ways to adapt? Are there ways to virtually support?
Mhm.
Like, what do you do in the face of these increases?
So, first of all, our entire team went home in mid-March and went virtual. So, all of our clinicians, advocates, and attorneys are working from home. They are still seeing clients through HIPAA compliant telehealth and through the phone. And we're able to get people protective orders through the courts are closed, but they are only open for protective orders. And they're doing those through Skype and different phone and Google, things like that. So we did put all of our prevention programs online as well. So we're really hoping as we're settling in here that people are able to, still access our offerings because it's so important and these relationships are still going on. For people in their homes, it's gotten quite dangerous and really scary. Um, there are, I call it the perfect storm of power and control. You have people literally in their homes, so many out of work, so many with financial struggles, feeling like they can't leave the house and literally afraid to leave the house. You have the children home and nobody has their usual outlets. Abusive partners don't have their usual places to go, like work and the gym and out with friends. And victims don't have their usual places to go, like work and the gym and out with friends. And it's hard to reach a clinician when you're sitting in the next room or even next to an abusive partner. So we've gotten a lot of calls from grocery store parking lots and people just like out walking. Unfortunately, technology abuse is a huge part of most abusive relationships, and it starts so young. It starts when these kids are in middle school and they're tracking each other on different apps and sharing inappropriate content and all those things. It starts really young, and we've actually backed up our programs to start even in elementary school because this generation just has more access to the technology and they need a lot of education around it. So we still can work with our clients if they're able to reach us. We've still, through the incredible generosity of the community, I just want to say individual donors, foundations, and grant funding agencies like the states and the counties have all stepped up in an incredible way to continue to allow us to provide our free services. So we've been able to, have all of our staff on laptops and using their personal cell phones to answer the helpline. We have, a robust IT presence now that we didn't have to have before. We put a lot of work into a library of videos online on our website that people can watch. So they can watch a video about safety planning, about coming back to court as the courts reopen, about getting a protective order. And we even did one about teen dating violence and just power-based violence in general to give people access to this information while we're, apart, physically apart. So we keep going, we keep answering the helpline. We have this wait list of people that are waiting for counseling, but we handle as many legal and advocacy cases as we can. We just hired some new people. So there's, I think, 24 employees now. In 2000, when the agency was founded, there was like one person in a closet at the Federation of Greater Washington, counseling people. And now part-time. And now we're up to, over 20 staff members. And they're just like, I'm so honored to work with these people. I can't tell you, Sarah, like they I'm getting teary because they give of themselves in such an immense way, and they're literally bringing their work home with them now, right? Like everybody's in their safe space, hopefully, which is their home. And as a social worker, to bring your clients home with you is not the usual MO. So I really honor them and think it's just incredible work, going in day in, day out, listening to really like the worst things that people do to each other. And then the joy is just helping. In fact, I just posted on Facebook. We have Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, and we're always trying to share as many resources as possible, so that people can get help and understand what we do. And I just posted the other day a thank you note from a client, and she wrote, it was actually to our attorney, and she said, "What you did for my family changed our lives. I thank you from the bottom of my heart." And it was a handwritten note. I mean, it's just it's just, those are the moments, right? That's why we do the work we do.
Yeah. I've heard from other Jewish communal professionals that it's so difficult to maintain any sort of division between the professional and the personal. But for you and your staff and your organization, I can't imagine, managing that under normal circumstances, let alone having to bring those people and their stories onto your personal cell phone within the walls of your own home. I'm sure that separation is incredibly difficult to maintain.
Yeah, we talk a lot about self-care. I worry a lot for my staff, and we try to implement as much as we can. We have unlimited paid time off, and we really encourage everyone to take it. We still have to audit at the end of the year and make sure that they all did. And some of them don't even take their minimum 2 weeks. So we really have to make sure that they're taking care of themselves. We have staff Netflix watch parties. We've had book groups. Right now we're reading Untamed by Glennon Doyle, which is
I just read that.
Oh, you can join us.
Oh, thanks.
We're going to talk about it in a couple of days. Yeah, that was just, I love her. That was amazing. And our watch parties are like, we watched 13 together, and had a conversation with a colleague who is also a PhD in criminology. So we could really talk about the criminal justice system. And sometimes we just watch rom-coms, or we watched Becoming together, the Michelle Obama documentary.
Yes.
So, and we do virtual coffee breaks and meditation and yoga. And, we're really just trying to make sure everybody builds in that time. It's the hardest thing, I think, and as we've been talking to the staff, is like after having a tough day or a tough session, there's no office to walk back into and have your colleagues there and just say, gosh, like that was really intense. And, like to debrief for a minute. So we're trying to set up ways for people to have access to, we set up teams, channels on Teams for them to have huddles. Just to say, like, it's between sessions and this was a tough one, even if it's over a chat and it's not quite the same as like a in-person, empathetic hug from a colleague. It's something. I really like just the thought of anybody burning out or feeling like they can't do this work anymore is, my biggest, fear that keeps me up at night, is really just taking care of our staff and making sure they have what they need to do their job and also still feel inspired and know that they're helping, because they're helping so many people, hundreds and hundreds of clients every year. And, they're just phenomenal. So Yeah, it's a lot. Watching the news and hoping that, we all can be responsible and take care of ourselves and each other, through the simple things like social distancing and masks and stuff, which seems like, I guess, too heavy of a lift for some people. Um, you know, just that sense of social responsibility. I think we all are anxious um, to get back to the office a little bit, just to sort of have that normalcy. So we'll see. The future will be revealed.
Yes. Well, Amanda, thank you so much, first and foremost, for the work that you do. I just am so impressed and moved by the breadth and depth of what you're able to provide within your community. I think it's really beautiful. And thank you for coming here today to share it with all of us, with me and our listeners. It's an important thing that we know about, and I'm honored to give you the platform to speak about the work that you're doing.
Thank you. I so appreciate that. And it's an honor to speak with you and share all of this. And we're here, 877-88-Cicada, Cicada.org, Cicada@Cicada.org. You can reach us anyway. And we're here to serve the community. And thank you. This is a wonderful service to the community also, Sarah. So I thank you for inviting me in today.
Thank you. And we'll make sure to put the helpline and all of those links in the show notes for easy access.
Thanks. Great.
Thanks, Amanda.
Thank you. Take care.
Leaderfolk is all about elevating voices and starting conversations. So now we'd love to hear from you. Email us at podcast@tcjewfolk.com to share your thoughts, your ideas, or to nominate future guests. Leaderfolk is a project of Jewfolk Inc. and the Jewfolk Podcast Network. For more information, visit tcjewfolk.com/podcast.